The scent of cinnamon and rising dough filled the pre-dawn kitchen as Mara Delgado worked, her strong hands rhythmically pressing into soft, yielding mass. Outside the windows of Saltwater Bakery, darkness still claimed the small coastal town of Port Haven, but inside, warmth radiated from the ovens and the single pendant light above the wooden work table. This was her sanctuary, this quiet hour before the world woke. 7 years she'd owned this place. 7 years of rebuilding, of kneading away memories with each batch of bread, of proving to herself in this town that she was more than the woman who had been so publicly discarded. "Mom?" A sleepy voice broke through the kitchen's quiet symphony of sounds. Mara looked up to see her daughter, Lucia, 12 years old and wild-haired from sleep, padding across the worn wooden floor in mismatched socks. "Hey, sweetheart. It's early," Mara said, dusting flour from her hands. "Couldn't sleep?" Lucia shook her head, curls bouncing. "The sea's loud tonight." She climbed onto one of the high stools at the workbench, resting her elbows on the floured surface. Mara smiled. They lived above the bakery in a small apartment where the sound of waves was their constant companion. "Want to help with the morning buns?" Lucia's answer was to roll up the sleeves of her pajama top. This was their ritual some mornings, working side by side, Lucia's hands mirroring her mother's movements, learning the family recipes Mara's grandmother had brought from Spain decades ago. "Is today still the fancy party?" Lucia asked, carefully twisting dough into a spiral. Mara nodded, ignoring the flutter of anxiety in her chest. "The Hospital Foundation Gala. Big opportunity for the bakery. Mrs. Rodriguez says half the town's donors will be there." What she didn't say, the other half of the town, the half she'd been carefully avoiding for years, would be there too. The Voss family. The family that had welcomed her once, then crushed her with a swift and merciless precision when their son had accused her of betrayal. The grand ballroom of Port Haven's historic Windward Hotel gleamed with crystal and silver that evening. Mara moved efficiently between servers, directing the placement of her dessert displays, miniature tarts topped with local berries, chocolate shells filled with sea salt caramel, delicate cookies spiced with cardamom and orange. Her catering whites were crisp, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, her expression professionally pleasant. No one watching would guess at her racing heart, at how she had scanned each entrance since arriving. Lucia stood nearby, proudly arranging cookie platters, wearing the blue dress they'd found at the second-hand store, altered to fit her slim frame. "Your work is exquisite," said a woman in a midnight blue gown, lifting one of the tarts. "I've been meaning to visit your bakery." "Thank you," Mara replied with a practiced smile. "We're open Tuesday through Sunday just off Harbor Street. I know exactly where." The woman's words cut off as her gaze drifted over Mara's shoulder, her expression shifting to something deferential. "Good evening, Mr. Voss." Mara felt it then, a change in the air, like the drop in pressure before a storm. She turned slowly. Julian Voss stood less than 10 feet away, his tall frame impeccably suited, silver at his temples now, but otherwise unchanged by the 7 years since she'd last seen him. Behind him stood his father, Edward Voss, the patriarch whose shipping empire dominated the town's economy, and whose name graced the hospital wing being celebrated tonight. Julian's eyes met hers, a moment of raw recognition before his features composed themselves into polite neutrality. He nodded once in acknowledgement before turning away to shake hands with the mayor. Mara exhaled slowly. She had prepared for this moment, had rehearsed it in her mind, the inevitable collision of their worlds in this small town. What she hadn't prepared for was Lucia's voice, bright and curious. "Mom, who's that man who was looking at you?" Before Mara could answer, Lucia had moved toward the display nearest Julian, straightening a row of pastries, her natural confidence carrying her into his orbit. "These are my mom's special cardamom stars," Mara heard her daughter say. "They took first place at the county fair last year." Julian looked down, momentarily startled by the girl's direct address. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps recognition of features so similar to Mara's own. "Is that so?" he replied, his voice controlled but gentle. "They look remarkable." They are. My mom's the best baker in 3 counties. That's what Mrs. Rodriguez says, and she's been everywhere. Julian's smile seemed genuine then, if cautious. I believe it. His gaze lifted, meeting Mara's across the room. Holding for a beat too long before Edward Voss placed a proprietary hand on his son's shoulder. Guiding him away, Mara crossed quickly to Lucia's side, her hand finding her daughter's shoulder. Let's check the kitchen, sweetheart. The chocolate fountain needs setting up. But something had already been set in motion. A stone dropped in still water, ripples moving outward. 3 days later, the email arrived. Mara almost deleted it. An unfamiliar address. A subject line reading only, regarding JV and the Mara Delgado incident. But curiosity won, and she clicked. The message was brief. The evidence was fabricated. The witnesses were paid. I can prove it. Meet me at Harborside Park, bench 17, Tuesday, 3 p.m. Mara stared at the screen, her hands trembling. The incident, such a sanitized term for what had destroyed her life. Julian accusing her of selling proprietary information about Voss shipping to competitors. Emails in her name, testimonies from colleagues she'd trusted. Her protestations of innocence dismissed as she was fired, divorced, and nearly prosecuted. Saved only by a lack of definitive proof that would stand up in court. She had weathered it by leaving everything behind. Starting the bakery with her grandmother's recipes and the last of her savings. Building a life focused entirely on Lucia and their daily bread. Now this, an anonymous claim that it had all been a lie. She closed the email without replying. Yet by Tuesday afternoon, she found herself walking toward Harborside Park, her heart a drumbeat of both hope and fear. The figure on bench 17 was a woman, not the man Mara had somehow expected. Middle-aged, with a neat bob and unremarkable business attire, she might have been any office worker enjoying the spring air. Ms. Delgado, the woman said as Mara approached. Thank you for coming. I'm Helen Mercer. The name meant nothing to Mara. She sat, leaving space between them. Your email made serious claims. Helen nodded, eyes scanning the area before she spoke. I've worked in IT at Voss Shipping for 15 years. 7 years ago, I was instructed to retrieve certain emails from the server backup. Emails supposedly showing your communications with Meridian partners. Mara's breath caught. Meridian had been Voss Shipping's main competitor. I found nothing, Helen continued. But 2 days later, the emails appeared in the system, backdated. I knew they'd been planted, but I said nothing. She met Mara's eyes directly. I was afraid for my job. I had 2 kids in college. Why come forward now? Cancer, Helen said simply. Stage 4. And there's more. The company's in trouble. The Voss family is selling to a foreign conglomerate. They're covering up financial irregularities going back years. She handed Mara a small flash drive. Everything's here. The original server logs showing the emails were created after the dates they supposedly were sent. Witness payment records. Even audio of Edward Voss discussing the plan. Mara stared at the tiny device. Why would they do this to me? You were getting too close to the real books. Remember that audit you were conducting? The one Julian insisted you lead? Helen's smile was sad. You were too good at your job, Ms. Delgado, and you weren't family. Mara closed her hand around the drive, her mind racing. This is dangerous information, Helen stood. That's why I've already sent copies to other interested parties, including a reporter at the Port Haven Gazette. She checked her watch. I should go. Be careful, Ms. Delgado. The Voss family didn't get where they are by playing fair. As Helen walked away, Mara called after her. Thank you. The woman paused, looking back. Don't thank me. I'm 7 years too late. That night, after Lucia was asleep, Mara plugged the drive into her laptop. File after file confirmed Helen's story, not just about her own case, but about years of financial manipulation at Voss Shipping. The evidence was damning but complex. She needed help. The reporter contacted her the next morning. Maya Chen, investigative journalist for the Gazette, had a reputation for tenacity. They met at a cafe 2 towns over. Helen Mercer reached out to me last week, Maya explained. She said you were framed. I've been looking into the Voss family's business dealings for months, but this adds a personal dimension I hadn't considered. I still don't understand all of it, Mara admitted. The technical details, I know someone who can help with that, Maya said. Former hacker turned security consultant. He owes me a favor. That someone was Eli Santos, a man with quick eyes and faster fingers. In Maya's small apartment office, he examined the drive's contents, his expression growing increasingly troubled. This is legitimate, he confirmed. The log timestamps don't lie. Those emails were created a week after you supposedly sent them. He pointed to another file. And this audio, I can clean it up, enhance it. Edward Voss's voice is distinctive. We need more, Maya said. This is a start, but the Voss family has an army of lawyers. Helen mentioned financial records? Mara nodded. The audit I was conducting before everything happened, I was finding discrepancies. That's why they needed me gone. Can you reconstruct your findings? Some of it. I'd need access to current data to show the pattern. Eli's smile was sharp. Leave that to me. For 2 weeks, they built their case methodically. Mara divided her time between the bakery, Lucia, and clandestine meetings with Maya and Eli. The weight of secrecy was heavy, but for the first time in years, she felt something like purpose beyond survival. Then the news broke. Helen Mercer had been found dead in her home. Natural causes, the report said. Her illness had been advanced, but the timing chilled Mara to the bone. They knew, she whispered to Maya over the phone. Somehow they knew she talked to us. All the more reason to move carefully, Maya replied. But we don't stop. Helen deserves that much. Dawn light filtered through the bakery windows as Mara shaped sourdough loaves, her movements automatic while her mind churned through possibilities. The bell over the door jingled. Too early for customers. Julian Voss stood in her bakery, looking out of place in his tailored suit. 7 years of imagined confrontations, and now he was here, in her space. We're not open yet, she said, not pausing in her work. I know. He remained by the door. I saw your daughter at the gala. She looks like you. Mara's hands stilled. What do you want, Julian? He stepped forward. To warn you. Whatever Helen Mercer told you. Helen is dead. I heard. I'm sorry. His face revealed nothing. She was ill for some time. Convenient timing. Mara met his gaze directly. Why are you really here? Julian glanced around the bakery, taking in the worn but lovingly maintained space, the photographs on the wall, Lucia. At various ages, Mara with her grandmother, the bakery's opening day. You've built something good, he said finally, without any help from you or your family. Mara... He stopped, seemingly at a loss. My father is dying. Cancer. The company is being sold. Whatever Helen told you about financial irregularities, it's complicated. It's fraud, Mara corrected. And what happened to me wasn't complicated. It was deliberate destruction. Julian's expression tightened. You don't understand the pressures? Get out of my bakery. He looked as if he might argue, then nodded once. At the door, he paused. Be careful, Mara. There's more at stake than you know. After he left, Mara called Maya. Julian Voss just came to warn me. They know we're investigating. We need to move faster, Maya decided. And I think it's time for something public. The Port Haven Children's Hospital fundraiser was the Voss family's crowning annual event, a showcase of their philanthropy and community standing. When Mara received the last-minute request to cater desserts after the original baker canceled, she recognized the opportunity for what it was. The night of the fundraiser, Saltwater Bakery's display stood in the center of the ballroom, an elaborate castle made of pastry, surrounded by delicate confections. Mara moved among the guests in a simple black dress, Lucia at her side in another carefully altered second-hand find. Edward Voss himself approached her display, leaning heavily on a cane, his once imposing frame diminished by illness, but his eyes still sharp. Ms. Delgado, he acknowledged with a nod. Your reputation precedes you. The committee was fortunate to secure your services on such short notice. Mara's smile didn't reach her eyes. I couldn't pass up the opportunity to support such a worthy cause. He studied her face. Indeed. My family has always believed in giving back to Port Haven. Some might say that depends on the definition of giving back, she replied softly. Something flickered in his expression, wariness perhaps. Before he could respond, the event coordinator called for attention, directing guests to take their seats for the presentation. As the lights dimmed for Edward Voss's introduction, screens around the ballroom lit up, not with the planned tribute video, but with documents. Financial records, server logs, highlighted emails, and finally, audio. The Delgado woman is a problem. She's seen too much. Julian's too soft on her. He actually believes she's innocent. Handle it. Create whatever evidence you need. Edward Voss's unmistakable voice filled the silent ballroom. When the lights came up, all eyes turned to him, then to Mara, standing straight-backed near her display, Maya Chen at her side with a recording device. Mr. Voss, Maya said clearly, would you care to comment on these documents showing that your company framed Mara Delgado 7 years ago to prevent her from exposing financial fraud? The chaos that followed made the front page of not just the Gazette, but state and national papers. Voss shipping scandal exposed. Whistleblower vindicated after 7 years. 3 months later, Mara stood in the courthouse corridor, exhausted but resolute. The preliminary hearings had been grueling, a parade of technical testimony, financial experts, and character witnesses. Edward Voss, too ill to attend, had been represented by his attorneys. Julian had appeared daily, never meeting her eyes. Today's ruling had been the first victory, enough evidence to proceed with a full case against Voss Shipping for fraud, defamation, and witness tampering. "Mom!" Lucia's voice echoed in the marble hallway as she ran toward Mara, followed by Maya Chen. "Ms. Chen says we won." "The first step," Mara corrected gently, pulling her daughter close. "There's still a long way to go." Maya nodded in agreement. "But it's a good start." The judge was clearly convinced by the evidence. She squeezed Mara's arm. "You should be proud." As they turned to leave, Julian Voss approached, alone for once without his entourage of lawyers. He stopped a respectful distance away. "May I speak with you?" he asked Mara. "Just for a moment." Maya tensed protectively, but Mara nodded. "It's okay. Lucia, go with Ms. Chen to get a snack from the cafeteria. I'll be right there." When they were alone, Julian spoke first. "The company will make a settlement offer. Full restitution plus damages. This isn't about money. I know." He ran a hand through his hair, now more silver than brown. "I've filed for control of what's left of the company. My father is too ill to fight me on it." Mara studied him, this man she had once loved, once believed in. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to make it right, not just financially." His voice was rough with emotion. "I believed them, Mara. My own father, the executives I'd trusted all my life. They told me you'd betrayed us, showed me the evidence, and I believed them over you." "You were their perfect weapon," Mara said quietly. "The person I trusted most." "I know." He met her eyes directly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that whatever happens with the company, I've instructed our lawyers to stop fighting the case, to admit full responsibility." Mara absorbed this in silence. "Your daughter," Julian said finally. "She's remarkable. You've done an amazing job, despite everything." "She's the best thing in my life," Mara replied. A question that had burned within her for 7 years suddenly surfaced. "Did you ever wonder, when you saw those dates on the supposed evidence? When you signed the divorce papers while I was still begging you to believe me? Did you ever doubt?" Pain crossed his features. "Too late," he admitted. Months later, I found inconsistencies. I confronted my father. He said it was done, that reopening it would destroy the company. I told myself you were better off without us. His laugh was hollow. Cowardice dressed up as nobility. Mara nodded, unsurprised but still wounded by the confirmation. I have to go. Lucia's waiting. Julian stepped aside. For what it's worth, Mara, the bakery, what you've built, it's extraordinary. Like you. The evening air was cool as Mara and Lucia walked along the harbor after dinner with Maya, celebrating the day's victory. The scent of salt water filled Mara's lungs, cleansing, bracing. Will we be rich now? Lucia asked suddenly, skipping ahead then circling back. Mara laughed. Is that what you heard today? Lucia shrugged. Camilla at school said if you win a lawsuit against rich people, you get tons of money. It's not about being rich, Mara said, pulling her daughter close. It's about the truth, about setting the record straight. But we might get some money? We might. Enough to make things easier. Mara smiled. Maybe expand the bakery. You could have a bigger bedroom. Lucia considered this. I like my room, but the bakery could be bigger. She looked up at her mother. Was he my dad? The man at the courthouse? The question caught Mara off guard. What makes you ask that? The way he looked at you. At me. Lucia's perception had always been sharp. And in the old pictures, you're with him sometimes. Mara sighed, guiding them to a bench overlooking the water. Julian Voss was my husband, yes. But he's not your father, sweetheart. Oh. Lucia absorbed this. Where is my father? He was a good man I knew briefly before I moved here. He never knew about you. This much was true. The brief relationship after her divorce, before she'd discovered her pregnancy. Someday, when you're older, we'll talk more about it. Lucia nodded, seemingly satisfied for now. I'm glad we came to Port Haven anyway. I like our life. Even with all the drama lately. Especially with the drama, Lucia grinned. Maya says you're the bravest person she knows. Fighting for the truth and stuff. Mara looked out at the horizon, where sea met sky in a blurred line. I wasn't always brave. For a long time, I just wanted to hide, to keep our life small and safe. Like a turtle, Lucia suggested. Exactly like a turtle. Mara smiled. But sometimes, when the truth finds you, you have to stand up for it. Even when it's scary. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fishing boats return to harbor, their running lights creating trails across the darkening water. The settlement paperwork arrived at Maya's office today, Mara said finally. Full admission of wrongdoing, public apology, restoration of my professional reputation. That's good, right? It's good, Mara confirmed. Not an ending exactly. More like a correction, a chance to move forward without that weight. And the bakery? We're still keeping it? Mara laughed, hugging her daughter close. Definitely keeping the bakery. It's who we are now. She looked toward their home, where lights glowed warmly in the gathering dusk. Saltwater bakery, built from scratch, just like us. The next morning, Mara's hands worked bread dough in the pre-dawn kitchen, the familiar rhythm now carrying something new, not just persistence, but vindication. Outside, the tide was rising, bringing with it possibilities she'd stopped allowing herself to imagine years ago. Behind her, the bakery door opened and closed softly. Maya Chen entered with 2 coffee cups and a newspaper tucked under her arm. Thought you might need this, she said, placing 1 cup near Mara's workspace. The story ran today. The headline read, Delgado vindicated. Voss shipping admits fraud. Agrees to settlement. How does it feel? Maya asked, leaning against the counter. Mara considered the question as she shaped the dough into a perfect round. Like I can finally breathe again. Like I'm more than just my survival. Outside, the first light of dawn touched the water, turning it to gold. In a few hours, Lucia would wake. The bakery would fill with customers. and life would continue, altered but intact, strengthened by truth finally brought to light. Mara looked at her flour-dusted hands, capable hands that had built a life from nothing, that had held her daughter through nightmares and joys, that had finally reached out to grasp justice when it presented itself. "It feels," she said finally, "like coming home to myself."
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.